Hey, I'm Mia Hemstad. I'm a wife, I'm a mom of 2 kids, and I'm a trauma-informed self-care coach. I also live with diagnosed PTSD and depression. I started sharing my mental wellness journey online in 2017 when I was diagnosed with postpartum depression and anxiety. And since then, I've heard from hundreds of women who all struggle with the same thing, putting ourselves last. This is a struggle that's keeping so many women burned out and unhappy, through no fault of our own, by the way. I've been working on my own healing as an abuse survivor since 2013. But when I became a mom, I really started to do the inner work of figuring out why I was putting myself last and how to start prioritizing myself for the first time in my life. This podcast is about sharing all of those lessons with you. So if you're interested in hearing honest stories, life advice, and inspiration that encourages you to make your health, happiness, and well-being a priority, then definitely stick around. Welcome to your No Longer Last journey. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Mia here. I'm really excited about today's podcast episode because it's all about how to sustainably accomplish your New Year goals without burning out or giving up. And there are a lot of reasons why this topic is exciting to me, but if you didn't already know, I am a reformed personal development junkie. I started reading self-help books when I was a teenager and obsessing over morning routines and schedules and productivity and goal setting. I was that straight A student, valedictorian of my college, top employee everywhere I've worked type of person. And I am a reformed and recovering workaholic, perfectionist, and all the good things. So know that these tips are going to be wholesome and rooted in prioritizing your health, your happiness, and your well-being. And I've learned so much from the 20 years of making mistakes when it comes to the way that I approach goals. And hopefully what I share with you today, well, I think at least, is going to be pretty different from a lot of the typical self-help goal setting advice. And you're probably listening to this episode in late January or early February, and maybe you're already feeling defeated. And so I hope that this episode is finding you at a really good time. So it's going to be pretty simple and straightforward, but I think really impactful. A lot of what I'm going to share with you today, I teach all of my clients, and I know that it helps and that it works. So I have 3 tips to share with you today about how to accomplish your New Year goals without burning out or giving up. And the first step is absolutely not to just make a laundry list of all of your goals. It's absolutely not to just wake up earlier, and it's absolutely not to just put it in your calendar like an appointment, like everything else, and treat it like an appointment and show up. Because if it was that simple, if practicing self-care was as simple as just putting it into our calendar, then we'd all be doing it. We all know how to use a calendar, okay? It's not that simple. And in my process, especially when becoming a mom, and especially when trying to figure out how to overcome burnout, I had to really look at what wasn't working, because I was trying really hard to follow all the advice that I was given and shown, that I was reading and hearing about, and it wasn't working for me. And I was sick and tired of feeling ashamed, of judging myself, of criticizing myself. I used to have a really mean inner voice, and I just needed to change things, especially when in motherhood, you directly see every day how your ish is like your kids are like they pick it up, like they smell it on you. And I just didn't want to pass down that like harsh, workaholic, just try harder mindset down to my kids. So the first step to sustainably accomplishing your New Year goals is to take a step back and look at all of the obstacles in your life, all of the barriers. I want you to really take a look at everything that's getting in the way of you achieving your goals, because there's probably a lot. And whenever I do this exercise with my clients, it's almost like they have an enlightenment period or like an awakening. It's really interesting. It's like they didn't realize just how much was on their plate. And I know this can be a really big prompt. It can feel overwhelming, which is why I have my clients break it up into 3 separate buckets. I want you to ask yourself, what are my mental obstacles? And this has to do with your beliefs around something. And I'm going to give you examples in a minute. What are your emotional obstacles around this goal that you're trying to achieve? And what are your situational obstacles around this goal that you're trying to achieve? So mental has to do with your beliefs. And a lot of, self-help gurus use the term like limiting beliefs. And I kind of like it too, because it's just something that you think, a story, a narrative that holds you back. So a good example of this is I wanted to develop a habit of moving my body every day. I call it intentional movement because it's a lot friendlier and kind of, it just doesn't make, the word exercise for me is just, it's so steeped in hustle culture. So I wanted to move my body every day. And one of the beliefs I had around that was making it super hard to move my body every day was I believed that exercise had to be hard for it to matter. And I was actually very shocked when I realized this belief. And this is another thing. Don't go into this exercise thinking that you're just going to like know all of the obstacles, because a lot of us are so used to dealing with this stuff that we don't realize that we are dealing with it, if that makes sense. So when I was reflecting and I was journaling on what's getting in the way, I realized I believed exercise had to be hard for it to matter, right? We're always seeing people that are like, yeah, like I almost threw up when I did that 45-minute HIIT workout, or, oh my gosh, like I was in a pool, there was a puddle of sweat, when I went to the gym, I was sweating, working so hard. And, I used to do ballet, I danced and jump ropes professionally. I used to be competitive. I understand where that comes from, but it wasn't serving me. It was literally an obstacle to me taking care of my new body as a mom. And so I had to change that belief from I believe exercise has to be hard for it to matter to exercise, at least in this new season, is all about intentionally moving my body. And it gets to be fun, and it gets to be a source of joy for me. It no longer needs to be a place of pain. It no longer needs to be a place of punishment. I'm not going to do that anymore. And shifting that one belief totally changed the way that I view exercise. Instead of being like, oh my God, I have to exercise today because I, ate this, or I still have that mom pouch or whatever. I was like, ooh, I'm going to spend 10 minutes exercising. And when I finish, like all that tension I feel in my neck from working all day is going to go away. Or when I exercise in the morning, it's like, I always feel so refreshed after my 10 minutes of yoga. I feel a boost of energy. Or I love doing a dance workout because I love dancing to like early 2000s hip hop and 90s hip hop. And that makes me so happy. Like it became a source of joy for me. It became something I looked forward to and still look forward to. So that's mental obstacles. Emotional obstacles has to do with shame and guilt, specifically your feelings around the thing that you're trying to do. So with this exercise example, I felt shame and guilt for losing my stamina and my strength. This was huge for me. I, again, was a dancer, a jump roper, ballerina, etc. I had like 8-pack abs. Like it was just like, I was used to that because I was raised in that. So there was never a time when I wasn't fit until I went off to college, studied super hard, worked really hard, basically had no time for exercise. Then I became a mom and surprise, surprise, still had no time for exercise. So I didn't have the stamina and strength I was so used to. And instead of continuing that shame and that guilt that were weighing me down and getting in the way of me moving my body, I decided to approach the shame and guilt with self-compassion. And this is something that I teach in my Intro to the Healing Journey course. And it's an important piece that a lot of people want to like skip because it sounds intangible and like you can't, it's not like a practical tip, like write this down. But truly, look your shame and guilt in the face, whatever it is. And for me, that was losing stamina and strength, and respond to it with compassion. And I love using what I call it's understandable statements. And so I wrote down, it's understandable that exercise took a back seat in my life, in my adult life. I was so focused on providing for myself financially, understandably, because I had no one else to call for money. And I had 2 babies, which is going to change your body inherently. I can rebuild and enjoy the process of getting stronger again. So let me repeat that. It's completely understandable that exercise took a back seat in my adult life. I was focused on providing for myself financially, and I had 2 babies. I can rebuild my stamina and enjoy the process of getting stronger. I really want you to try approaching whatever you feel ashamed of and whatever you feel guilty about with these it's understandable statements. It's understandable that I fill in the blank, because it makes you realize that you're actually filling in your shame and guilt statement with, I don't have stamina and strength anymore because I'm lazy. I don't have stamina and strength anymore because I'm undisciplined. I don't have stamina and strength anymore because insert really harmful critical thing here. And instead, looking at what actually happened and realizing that there's a perfectly understandable grounded reason why where you're at, why you're where you're at. And it's okay. And all of a sudden, it just like alleviates all this misplaced, unnecessary guilt and shame, and then energizes you to start the process, start the journey of pursuing the thing that lights you up, of makes you happy. Because movement, I don't know about you, but it makes me feel really good when I make time for that, because it's a way of truly energizing me before I have to pour out all day at work, pour out all day at home, pour out all day with my kids. So it's amazing when you can learn how to write those it's understandable statements. Start by writing them down and eventually becomes habitual, and you'll start doing it automatically in your head. And then the last obstacle I want to touch on is situational obstacles. And this could be lack of money, lack of time, lack of energy due to mental health conditions, lack of knowledge, struggling with executive functioning because you have ADHD or neurodivergent, struggling to make plans, manage time. Those are situational obstacles. So applying that to this exercise example, I had next to no time and energy to move my body, and my anxiety and depression made it really hard for me to leave the house. So the idea of going to a workout class, I had like no money for that. The idea of driving anywhere, I was too anxious. The idea of packing up my kids in the stroller to go on a walk was too scary. I'm like, what if the baby starts crying and wants to breastfeed and there's nowhere to sit down? Like my head would just go crazy with all of these scenarios. And it was so overwhelming. I would just end up paralyzed and scroll on my phone because the paralysis of all the anxiety was just so intense. And so my response to those situational obstacles ended up being, I will do the best with the time, energy, and resources I have, and I will allow my capacity to grow from there. And let me tell you, my capacity has grown. I used to be able to only do 5 minutes of stretching, completely seated, couldn't do any stretches where my head would go down because had a jaw clenching problem at the time. And now I can do 20 minutes of yoga. I can walk up an incline 300 feet above sea level that goes straight up, and I don't lose my breath. I can walk 2 miles now without having to stop to take a break. Like, it's amazing. It's been over a 4-year period, but that's what happens when we just address the obstacles instead of trying to just try harder, and we're able to really peel back all of the layers that are getting in the way. And that's really what I want to communicate to you with this point. And which is that a lot of self-help advice is like, you just need to be more disciplined and have more willpower and try harder. But that doesn't actually address the real heart of the matter, which is that a lot of us, especially moms and especially those of us who live with mental health conditions, we need to focus actually on reducing the resistance that we experience and reducing the obstacles around our goals. Trying harder works temporarily, but it will phase out, and it does burn you out, because when you're pushing against obstacles that are there, you're not actually dealing with them and helping them go away. They're eventually going to balloon, and you're going to go right back to zero and feel super defeated. I want you to ditch the just be more disciplined, use more willpower approach, and I want you to try this approach instead of recognizing your different obstacles and finding, helpful ways to respond to them. Okay, so the second tip I'm really excited about, you've probably heard me talk about it ad nauseum on social media and on the podcast, but that's because it is really freaking good, okay? And that is to proactively make space, mentally, emotionally, and physically, for your goals, okay? This goes along with the theme of this isn't about using more willpower. If you're struggling to achieve your goals or practice your habits that you set for yourself, it's not because you're not trying hard enough or you need to use your calendar better. It's because you have too much on your plate, okay? And this is a practice that is really helpful to do it weekly. I do it weekly, and it's utilizing my 3D boundary setting framework. What can you decrease? What can you delete? What can you delegate, okay? So minimize things that you are doing. Instead of cooking every day, can you cook in double batches so that you only cook every other day? Can you completely remove a commitment from your plate? Can you delegate? On my last episode, I talked about a chore chart. So that's very clear to my husband what I need him to do. And I even hate saying that because we're both equally benefiting from the home we live in and the food that's in the fridge and the dishes that we eat off of. But basically just saying like, hey, I can't do these things anymore. So I don't want you to expect me to do them anymore. I need you to do them. Just having that clear delegation, it just minimizes disagreements and arguments and resentment. So go through that process of, okay, mentally, emotionally, and physically, how can I make more space for my daily movement? How can I make more space so that I can shower every day? How can I make more space to make sure I have time to get ready in the morning, before the day gets away from me, especially if you have a newborn? How can I make more space to journal 10 minutes before I lay my head on my pillow at night? How can I make more space to ensure that I'm connecting with friends? There is a way to make more space. And the more if you make a little bit of space, eventually there'll be more capacity as your mental health gets better, hopefully, as your kids get older and hopefully go off to school, et cetera, et cetera. So utilize the 3D framework, decrease, delete, delegate. And I want to emphasize, like, this is a weekly practice for me. You're never going to do this process once and just be good. I lean on this framework every time I'm struggling to practice a habit. Every time I'm like, I want to do X, have a better nighttime routine and go to bed at a certain time, and it doesn't happen. Instead of entering that shame spiral, I ask myself, okay, number one, what got in the way? What were the obstacles, mental, emotional, situational? Go through that. Then I go, okay, well, how can I make more space to ensure that I have enough time to wind down before bed, that I have enough time to have some me time so I don't just feel like all I did was work all day, and so that I have enough time to really go to bed and have enough time to sleep. And so I go through this process of decrease, delete, delegate, and it really helps. It's part of the weekly wellness check-in. It really helps me to free up that time and energy and space, and it just helps me stay focused on what's true. And what's true is that if I'm not practicing my self-care, if I'm not achieving my goals, it's because there's too much on my plate and stuff got in the way. It's not because there's something wrong with me or I have bad time management skills. Okay, so really helpful, proactive way to approach that. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to give you one of my favorite tips that, if you can believe it, only really hit me in the last year. And I've been, again, studying and practicing productivity, goal setting, goal achieving for a very long time with a lot of success. And this tip only really sunk in last year. So I'm so excited to share it with you when we come back from the break.
Have you ever gotten a little time to take care of yourself and then you're instantly overwhelmed with what the heck you should do first? Yeah, I used to feel that way too. I call that self-care overwhelm, which leads to decision fatigue and results in you not taking care of yourself in the way that you really need to feel nourished and filled up. This used to be a constant problem for me back when I had my second baby, and that's when I created the 4B self-care framework to help my exhausted mom brain figure out what I needed to do to take care of myself with the small pockets of time and energy that I had. In this framework, there are 4 types of self-care: basic, boring, brilliant, and bougie. In my new mini course, I teach you about these 4 types of self-care, I show you how to prioritize, and I give you a printable to plan out your self-care over a 30-day period to help you go on your own journey of self-discovery to figure out what you really need to feel healthy, happy, and taken care of. You can get this mini course completely for free on my website at miahemstad.com/course. I'll have it linked in the show notes as well.
All right, welcome back. So I'm so excited to share this tip with you, and that is to stop trying to achieve so many goals all at the same time. I know we're in a new year. I know it's January. I know we're new year, new me energy. I know we're excited to make some changes in our lives. But if you try to make all the changes at one time, you are going to disappoint yourself. You are going to burn out. That is the opposite of sustainable, okay? And it also is a recipe for making this process miserable. And believe it or not, growth and change gets to be fun. The process of growing and changing your life, it gets to be exciting. I am so thrilled, and I know this sounds so cheesy, but every day I wake up and I'm like, how am I living in Europe right now? How do I live near the ocean? How is it that I get to walk to the beach? How is it? And it's this process started years ago. I would say 8 years ago, when I was like, I hate my life. I'm miserable and I want to change it. And I didn't move to Europe the next year. It's been 8 years of steady work and progress and growth. And that's why I'm so passionate about showing up here and sharing it, because maybe that'll shave off a few years of from all the trial and error I've gone through and help you design the life that supports your well-being. But genuinely, this lesson didn't really hit me until last year. And I was leading support group or coaching and community call for my program. And one of my clients said, I often overestimate how much I can get done in a week, and I underestimate how much I can get done in a year. And it hit me so hard because I am over promise, under deliver. If you can believe it, I basically always say like, I'll get it to you by Friday, and I don't really get it to you until Wednesday, kind of a thing. And it's bad. Like, I mean, I'm sure the people I work with are like, me, you're exaggerating, but it's just like, I really struggle. And it's part of my own executive functioning challenges of being able to really plan and know how long something will take. But yeah, I really tend, for most of my life, I have multiple habits I want to implement, like move my body every day, drink a certain amount of water every day, go to bed at a certain time, read a certain amount of books, start dance class again, stay connected with my friends, have one-on-one dates with my children. Like, we're already at 7, okay? And if I try to implement and layer in all those things all at once, you're going to overload your brain. You're going to set yourself up for failure, and you don't deserve that. So when I stepped back and really just stopped doing that and focus on one practice at a time, I focus on one per month. And even if by the second month you still haven't mastered, quote unquote, the first practice you were deciding on, let's say go to bed early, the thing is, by the second month, there's still like pieces and remnants of that practice that are easier than if you were to do everything at once, right? So, and it's also connects to that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats. I call them cornerstone habits. If you get certain habits done well, for me, that's sleep, getting energy from a good night's sleep, it influences everything else. And if you're in the newborn phase, I know a lot of people like, they hate hearing sleep when the baby sleeps. And I don't give that recommendation to everyone, but I definitely structured my entire day around my kids' naps when they were both napping, and I would make them nap. When I say make them, I basically made the whole house so dark you couldn't not nap, and we would come home every day at 11:30 and sleep from noon to 2. And that was my uninterrupted sleep, because my daughter like woke up every 90 minutes to breastfeed. It was a lot. So I get it, and I know that you can't just like make sleep your number one cornerstone habit. But what I want to emphasize here is that as much as you're excited or need to change a lot of your habits in order to see real healing in your life, I want you to trust that you'll get there. But you're not going to get there if you try to do it all at one time. And so I set an intention last year to really work on my sleep, and it took the whole year. But every month I got to know myself a little bit better and a little bit better, and it got easier and easier and easier. So I was able to layer in movement, and then layer in water, and layer in, and I know it's kind of like, well, Mia, didn't you already have a lot of those down? A lot of those I did, but when you're a mother, illness can throw things out of whack. Kids are home from school for 2 weeks. I had huge events being done at work, financial uncertainties because of job fluctuations on my husband's end, and just things happen in your life. And then you kind of stop practicing a habit for a while, and it gets out of practice for you. And so I really had to kind of restart a lot of my habits last year. I mentioned this in an Instagram post a few weeks ago that 2023 was all about refining that balance. It was like a recalibration year of figuring out like how to go to bed at a good time, how to move my body again in a new neighborhood, and like just so many things. So I gave myself the grace to kind of start over, and it really cemented this tip I'm sharing with you, this advice. Stop trying to achieve so many goals at the same time. You are going to serve yourself so much better by doing one thing at a time. And again, remember, this whole process is about loving and caring for yourself. I know for me, it's about healing that inner child that believes she has to be perfect and the best in order to be loved, in order to be safe. And it's really important to approach any sort of goal setting, for me, from a place of deep love for myself, like love for that little girl that just needs tenderness and not speed. So the way we approach our lives and our habits and all of this stuff, it really does matter. It impacts the energy that we put in and get out from this process. And so just know that overdoing it with this kind of stuff, it's the opposite of healing and loving and caring for yourself in a way that really kind of deals with that inner critic and deals with just any other things that you might have grown up with that don't serve you to this day. So the last thing I want to say on this is the beautiful thing about focusing on one habit at a time, one habit per month, is when you do the weekly wellness check-in, you're able to look back at the week and go, okay, did I go to bed at 9:30 like I planned? No. Okay, why? What happened? I go through the obstacles, I go through the boundaries, and I evaluate what happened. And it helps me to see, oh, well, because I leave my phone in plain sight. So after I put the kids to bed, I end up getting lost on a Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts rabbit hole. And I wake up from the dream. I look up 2 hours later and realize it's 11 o'clock at night. So what do I need to do? I need to put my phone away when work is done and put it somewhere where I don't see it. Okay. So that's a way that reflection in my weekly wellness check-in adapts the way that I prepare for bed. And then the next week goes by and then I do the check-in again and go, okay, how did I do? Okay, I did manage to get to bed at 9:30 a couple of the nights, but realized that the other nights I still really struggled, and it's because I need to wind down and I don't know how to wind down without my phone. And that's another thing that I teach. I have a class called Habit Strategies That Actually Work. And I talk about how when you just tell yourself to not do something, you aren't actually helping yourself form that habit, because our brain doesn't do well focusing on the negative. You need to replace, not just remove. So I went out and I got a novel and, decided that it's okay to watch, one show, but it needed to be a comedy and it needed to be less than 45 minutes, kind of like adding in things that I could do to help me unwind and relax and signal to my brain that it's the end of the day, right? So it wasn't enough to just remove my phone. I needed to give myself something else to replace it with. So that's another tip for you. But basically what I'm trying to get across to you here is the beautiful thing about weekly wellness check-ins when you only are focusing on one habit at a time, because then these check-ins don't have to be hours long. No one has time for that. Sit down on a Sunday for 10 minutes, ask yourself how your habit went, what went well, what didn't, tweak things, and then watch as your habits start to adapt and adjust to work for you better, to honor the season of life you're in, the mental health challenges you may live with, the fact that you're a mother, if you have a demanding job, your habits are going to slowly start to adapt and mold to really serve you. And that's always what I remind my clients. I say, your habits are, your self-care is supposed to serve you, not the other way around. Anytime you feel like burdened by your self-care, it's because you're approaching it the wrong way. And so it's time to adjust the plan, and to recognize that the plan is broken, not you, right? You're never the thing that's broken. The plan is broken. So when you do the weekly wellness check-in, you're able to go, let's adapt this plan. Let's adjust this plan. Let's fix this plan so that this habit can really serve me and support me. And it's a really, really beautiful thing. And that's part of why I designed my coaching program to be 12 months long. I know I've gotten messages from people saying, wow, 12 months long, that's really long. It's an immersion experience. There's a reason why my live coaching program is an immersion experience that's 12 months long. Because even though a lot of the other coaches in this space, like they have 6-week programs and 10-week programs, that's great. And more power to them. But I just know that if we really want people to have the time and the opportunity to grow and create lasting, sustainable changes in their life, they need more time. And even before, in my program, you have one class a month, to focus on one self-care per month. Before you even do that, I have what's called the build the foundation phase of the no longer last journey. And that's where you learn habit change strategies that actually work, how to nourish yourself instead of numb, how to set boundaries, how to practice real self-awareness, self-compassion, self-connection. All of these things, because again, it's not about setting the goal and finding a time and putting it in your calendar and just showing up. It's about all the things surrounding that, all the layers and complexity surrounding the things that you want to achieve in your life due to mental health challenges, due to being married, due to being a mother, due to whatever your unique circumstances are. Those need to be addressed. And the fact that we have to always acknowledge when we set a goal that as women and as mothers, we live in a patriarchal, capitalistic society that wants us to always prioritize economic output, economic gain, and quite frankly, staying at home and doing all the domestic labor as women and as moms, because that's where we quote unquote should be. And we're having to fight all of these layers every time we decide to put our laces on and go for a walk, to choose to take extra time to make ourselves a meal that actually feels nourishing. So don't think that this is just about you not trying hard enough. Don't think that this is just about you not like having good time management skills or whatever. There's so many things getting in the way of you taking good care. So if it feels hard, it's because it is hard. And I really hope that today's tips can help you to peel back some of that hard so that it can become just a little bit easier for you to approach your self-care goals from a loving place so that you can get to the end of this year and go, wow, I found a way to approach pursuing my goals that didn't burn me out, that didn't make me give up, and actually strengthen my relationship with myself. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. And as always, some of the most amazing conversations and support and advice happen in my weekly newsletter. So I'll leave all the links in the description and in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening and spending time with me. I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.